the show about art. Sit back and relax so the show can now start. Hello and welcome to episode 2 of the Art Show. To briefly recap, this is a show where artists from the Office Hours Live community get together to discuss their craft while drawing Art Garfunkel. I am your host, Brian Bonelli, and in episode 1 I showed you how to make colored pencil art. And before we go on, I do need to thank you all for the wonderful feedback we've received so far. I really am touched, thank you. We also received some terrific viewer art. This first piece is a blind contour line drawing from Marianne, who is an Office Hours Live superfan. And with this style of drawing, you're looking at your subject the entire time without ever looking at what you're actually drawing, so it's a fun experiment. I tried this once using Flo from those Progressive Auto commercials as my subject, and the results were interesting. This next piece is a colored pencil drawing from Far Out Beagle 2 Remix on Instagram. They really captured Art's rosy red cheeks and glorious fro. Now I see that they used graph paper here, and that brings me to a topic I want to quickly discuss, and that is if you've been having trouble getting a likeness using any of the techniques we've talked about so far, you may want to try this thing called the grid method. And that's where you draw a grid on your reference photo and then draw another grid on your sketchbook or canvas, whatever you're going to be drawing on. And instead of approaching the subject as a whole, you're just going to draw box by box. And by just focusing on those little areas, you're able to get the details a little better and hopefully get a better likeness. Now, I personally don't use this technique only because I don't have the patience to draw out a grid like that. But if you're going to be working in the larger scale, like if you're going to be making a mural or something like that, it's good to know this. But I've been yammering on too much. Our guest today is Ashley Brown, and she's going to be teaching us all about digital art. Ashley is an incredibly versatile artist. She does photography, sculpture, she's made animations for Office Hours Live and Neil Hamburger, she's made album cover art for Major Entertainer, and she's even made official on-cinema merchandise that you could buy right now. Ladies and gentlemen, here's Ashley Brown.
So I guess process that I usually follow and making a digital illustration. Well, firstly, this is in Photoshop on a computer using a digital tablet called a Wacom or Wacom to get like the right proportions. You can kind of see I'm chopping and changing different parts of his face, skewing it, scaling it up, scaling it down. And I'm just trying to, I guess, like look at the subject and the features of his face individually rather than, I guess, like how I would mentally want to draw a face. I try and look at the image, go back, look at the image or the reference, and then go back to the drawing to try and nail it as best as I can, as best as my eyes and brain can. Yeah, and I'm using like a digital brush that's kind of painterly, or it has a bit of a texture to it. You can download a lot of free ones from the internet, or you can make your own even. But yes, that's all I can think of right now to say.
I bought a Wacom years and years and years ago, and I think it came with like different types of like pens, like styluses to use. Now, does that
Right.
play into it at all?
No, I have just the one. I don't think I've ever owned a Wacom that had a different pen. But yeah, there's just like a nib on the end. And then I guess you could use the end as an eraser, but I never do. You can program it to be an eraser. Does that answer the question?
Yeah. Yeah, I think mine came with like like different nibs, I guess, different styles or different types.
Oh, right.
Yeah, maybe not different pens, but just nibs.
No, I know you mean. So there are different. I think they're different. They're made of different things. So the one I have is like a hard plastic, but you can get kind of like a softer one, and it's just different texturally to draw with. I find some quite squeaky, but this one suits me well. So yeah, there are a few different kinds of nibs you can use, but it's all preference.
Ashley, I like watching you correct certain things. You know, like there was an eyeball, you just moved the eyeball over a little bit, like half a centimeter. And I was like, that made a big difference because his eyes are kind of splayed like that. And I like how you move the lip forward a little and then the nose up. These are the kind of adjustments that really make somebody look accurate to who they are. These tiny little things that you wouldn't notice. It's like, you know, his nose is this long, his, you know, his lip and his mouth and his nose are this far apart. So I really enjoyed watching all those corrections that you were doing in real time on the computer or
Thank
laptop,
you.
I should say. Computer.
Yeah, it's really, it can be really tricky, and I think doing digital art kind of, it's just very easy to correct those things. I remember Brian mentioning that he would sometimes trash things if, you know, the ear was slightly too far away. And I do physical art too, so I understand that it's yeah, it just is a little bit more forgiving in the sense that you can just shift the ear over slightly and have to start again. But
So yeah, that's great. So at any point, Ashley, it's really great how it doesn't matter how far into the drawing you are, how deep into it you are. You could always like you could be like almost done, and you could be like, oh, you know, I want to move the eye just a little more, or I want to make it a little bigger, right?
like, I'd say in the case with the Art Garfunkel piece, yeah, like at any point probably could have shifted things around. I'd say like if you're doing stuff in one line weight, and if you scale it up, you might notice that the outline is bigger or thicker. So depending on how precious you want to be about it, you maybe could tell that you've enlarged or scaled things around, but it's a lot more forgiving.
Maybe I don't. Do you want to touch on like the digital versus traditional art, like how some people, you know, do people still argue like is if no we kind of, you know, doing it with your hands is better than doing it with a computer, you know? Is that still an argument that people have, or have we come to our sense?
I mean, I'm sure some people do. And I'd argue that, like, I don't know, depending on what you're talking about, I just feel like they're two totally different mediums or forms of art. Because I think maybe some people have the perception that digital art is some kind of photo with a filter slapped on it, or some kind of computer generated thing that doesn't have like a human touch to it. Which I'd argue that it still does, or some art still does. Yeah, I don't really know. I haven't really
I think I've heard the argument that it's like not as challenging because you can just erase things so easily. But I don't know. I still think I've tried digital art and it's really hard and confusing for me who's not good at technology. So like it's completely foreign to me, and it takes a lot of skill to learn how to use everything and make it look good.
maybe something that can be a little bit tricky is like if you're used to drawing physically or traditionally, and then you're making the jump into digital illustration using a Wacom tablet, training your eye to not be looking directly down at your hand to what you're looking at and looking at a screen instead can be kind of like mentally confusing, or just something that you have to practice or used to. But I feel like the tools and not knowing that they exist, like as long as you know where the brush tool is and the eraser tool, I think you'll be fine. Because there's so many different things within Photoshop that you can try and learn and experiment with and play with. So I'd
And
say
then-
just take it
And
step by step.
And do you
Go ahead.
exclusively use Photoshop, or have you ever tried any other, like, are there any like open source things that you've tried, or?
There's one called Photopea. I don't know if Canva has that capability, but I haven't actually tried too many different programs for illustration, but
Oh, I could vouch for Photopea. Photopea is a very, very, if you can't afford Photoshop, Photopea is free. It's browser based. You don't have to download anything on your computer, and it's like, it should be illegal because it's pretty much, it's very close to Photoshop. So you could, if you could learn on Photopea, and you could do, it's all the skills transfer. I know there's also GIMP, which I don't like at all. That's another open source thing. It's free. I just find you could do everything so much faster and better with Photopea or Photoshop. And Canva is also great. I use it for work a lot. I make a lot of work stuff, just flyers for the library and things like that. But I use a paid account, so I'm not sure how good it is if you are using the free version. And also, you can't really like draw in Canva. It's more like manipulating things that are already there, which is another fun challenge. But it's not. I don't think it's on the same level, at least when it comes to just freestyle drawing. Okay.
I was gonna say,
Oh.
my husband does a lot of digital art, and I know he uses like YouTube as like his best friend as far as learning different techniques. If he wants to learn something, I know he'll either kind of play around or look it up on YouTube, and there'll be lots of information there.
agree.
And that's it for episode 2 of The Art Show. I hope you enjoyed it. Next time we're going to have Ellie Haydu here to talk about pen and ink art, and her drawings are really funny. You're not going to want to miss that. In the meantime, if you have any questions, comments, complaints, or if you just have your own drawings of Art Garfunkel you want me to possibly showcase, just shoot me a DM on social media. I am the Brian Bonelli on Twitter and All the President's Man on Instagram. Until then, so long, so long.